This conference will now be recorded.
9 a.m. and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I would start by welcoming you all here today, and I would ask our town clerk to call the roll, please.
Chair Cody,
Present.
Vice Chair Hinton,
Present.
Member Bingham,
Here.
Member Cassidy,
Present.
Member Sloat.
Present.
Thank you. Now, if you'd all join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start with a review of the minutes that were in our package of the March 16th Board of Adjustment meeting. Is there a motion?
Could I ask a question?
Certainly.
On page 2, where we were talking about the chickadee huts and the seawall construction, Town Clerk Armstrong stated that a grandfathered structure could be reconstructed if it's destroyed by any non-voluntary means. But the chickadee huts along the seawall were taken down to put the seawall in. It wasn't non-voluntary. Am I incorrect on that?
I think it was initially destroyed by the hurricane.
Not all of them, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of their back was caving in.
Okay.
So we had to get the seawall,
Okay.
and we had to do a resolution of emergency for the DEC.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve?
That's
Second, is there any discussion other than what Ms. Cassidy said? Okay, there being no discussion, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
The minutes of the March 16th meeting are approved. Thank you. Now, the proceedings are now called to order on agenda item number 2, the quasi judicial hearing to consider the variance request for 95 Island Drive South. Would you please read the agenda item title?
An application submitted by Renee Alonso as agent for Scott and Michelle Welch for a parcel of property located at 95 Island Drive South, Ocean Ridge, Florida, 33435. Requesting a variance for the provision of the Land Development Code, Chapter 64, zoning, Article 1, District Regulations, Section 64-1, RSF and RSD, single family residential districts, also from the provisions of the Land Development Code, Chapter 67, building and building regulations, Article 3, technical codes and other construction standards, Section 67-31, roof systems, to permit a complete flat roof with a pitch of 1/4 inch per foot for proper drainage for entire roof. The variance would allow for a complete flat roof on the primary structure. The property is located at 95 Island Drive South. Property control number is 46, 43, 45, 22, 10, 00009, 50, and legally described as McCormick Model Addition 1, Lot 95.
Thank you, Carla. At this time, any ex parte communications should either be disclosed by identifying the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, or any correspondence be provided to the town clerk and made a part of the public record. In addition, each member of the board may identify the existence of any investigations, site visits he or she has conducted, or any expert conditions received, and disclose any conflicts of interest on this matter. So, Commissioner Sloat,
nothing
no?
to disclose.
Nothing to disclose? Nothing to disclose.
Nothing.
I did drive by the site yesterday morning at 8:30. I called Mr. Alonso to talk to him about the project and the history over the last year since the permit was issued, and his communications with planning and zoning. And then I also called Dave Hutchins, who's on planning and zoning, left him a message, and he texted me back last night.
Okay. Thank you. All right, now we will proceed with the hearing on this matter. Will the town clerk please swear in the witnesses?
Will anyone wishing to speak on this matter, please rise and raise your right hand. You swear to affirm the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, when you come forward, please state your name and address clearly for the record, and whether or not you've been sworn in.
Well,
Staff will go first.
the staff will go first. I'm sorry. The town staff will now make its presentation on this matter.
Good morning, Chair, board members.
Good
Corey
morning.
O'Gorman, Town Planner. As the clerk indicated, this is a request for a variance to the town code requirements for a slope roof. And as outlined in the staff analysis, the special conditions that are identified are related to the design of the structure rather than the land involved. And is contrary to the intent of the code for granting the variance. As a result, the recommendation from staff is for denial of this application. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
When are we asking questions?
We can now of each individual
That
witness.
is one of my biggest questions was, it seems that the builder and owner have the support of planning and zoning. And so I'm curious, and it's not infringing, it's actually designed to address what is the ultimate changes being sought with the ordinance for flat roofs. So why is town staff against it?
So I
Because
don't
it's
think,
contrary to the requirements for a variance.
I'm sorry?
It's contrary to the requirements of the variance. They should wait until the zoning regulations have been changed.
They've been waiting since June, last June, that it's been being discussed. And I've been through the minutes of planning and zoning. It's only been on the agenda a couple of times, and there are no minutes from the February meeting. So we don't know what the discussion has been from planning and zoning.
And I don't know if we can say on the record that planning and zoning supports it. They did suggest that the applicant apply for a variance. They didn't take a formal vote or anything.
Well,
that said
would they suggest applying for a variance with the intent to have it denied?
and let's also, it's still up to you all, regardless of what staff recommendation is. That's why you all are here, and that's why we brought it forward.
Okay, I wondered why
However,
staff is contrary to what I'm hearing about planning and zoning.
Because it's based on design, and even though the construction permit is already approved as with the pitch and with the parapet as it is. I know the applicant will explain their situation where they do want a flat roof because they find it better for drainage.
Yeah.
And it still will be up to all of you to make the decision, not us. Staff just based a recommendation based on what we interpret as the code, but ultimately this application is before you to make that decision.
Thank you.
I don't think that we're in a position to second guess planning and zoning, because I heard somewhat the opposite story. And if you want all of your zoning laws to go higgledy-piggledy, people can do what they want to do, then we'll start by trying to second guess what planning and zoning is going to do with the roof. I suggest that we follow what rules are in order at the time, not guessing whether we're going to go to a high-rise local community somewhere. That's a
But the proposed ordinance, Betty, is exactly what they're asking to do. So
but they have not finished discussing it, the pros and cons, and I do not think that we're in a position to second guess and force them into a position by adopting an ordinance ahead of time.
Madam Chair, if I may, just
Please.
from a legal standpoint, variances from a legal standpoint, the criteria that you look at to grant a variance require a showing of a hardship. And that hardship, as Corey mentioned, is really based on you have an odd shaped lot and you're not afforded the same latitude as your neighbor that has a regular sized lot and doesn't have weird configurations that they have to do. That's the true meaning of a variance. But you're a board and you listen to different things that come before you and make your decision based on the evidence presented. And whether or not that's truly strict to the legal requirements for a variance or not, that's left up to your discretion. What staff is trying to do is to point out legally when you're looking at a variance, these are our criteria that we're supposed to apply. It doesn't take into, these are your neighbors, it doesn't take into the fact that this makes sense because We're moving towards flat roof with regulations. Those types of things aren't taken in, and it's really just a strict sort of legal view of it. This flat roof ordinance has taken a lot of time because, as you can imagine, sprinkled throughout the code, there are different things about roofs and what can be on and what can't be on. It's pitched. There's no flat roofs, and going through it has been quite a challenge. And we brought up the most recent version to planning and zoning so they could look at it, and they said, we don't want to do it for every, district, zoning district in the town. We want to restrict it to residential. So we've gone back to restrict it, but we're probably going to have another discussion with planning and zoning about it, because there are areas where we run into different things, whether it's a pitched roof or a flat roof. So I do apologize. It's taking time to get through that. But just so you understand, that's sort of the pure legal twist on variances, and sometimes why staff's recommendation is really trying to focus on legally.
Can you give a guesstimate of what time would we be looking at before that would be enacted?
It's probably going to be, I would say a couple months at least, because we've just discussed yesterday internally, staff going back to planning and zoning with some clarifications needed. After that, we have to bring them back a draft ordinance. And so we're talking about once a month. So we anticipate hopefully within the next 2 months, it'll be before the commission, but then they have to hear it for 2 meetings. So it's taken a while. It's just a lot to do. It's not a short little quick project. You just turn on the flat roofs and you're ready to roll. So it's just taking time.
So the absolute soonest would probably be this fall in October, given the number of months.
Yeah, I mean, since you have 1 meeting a month, it does take time for this to work through.
I have another question. Had they discussed at all that a lot of these houses are on filled land, which has a tendency to settle? And what happens to a flat roof when the property settles, and who's responsible? You're responsible if the roof cracks?
No, he's not.
No.
He's not from a legal standpoint.
I'm sorry.
So there's
All right.
a lot of
Yeah.
issues that we're looking at and working with P&Z to work through those issues. It's just taking time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Guy, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Randy Guy, building official. Actually, I'm not for or against this project. It's up to the board to make this decision. If you guys have a technical question, please free to ask, but the building department holds no position on that. With regards to the review of this, I'm usually not a part of the review process. I'm just here kind of as an expert witness person.
Any questions for the staff?
Yeah, I have a question. Currently, a variance is from the current ordinance, and the current ordinance is being changed. So I'm not sure which one we're giving a variance from. But the old ordinance did include a parapet wall that surrounds a flat roof with a certain pitch, right, for drainage. And from what I've read, the proposed ordinance includes a parapet wall for to hide the pitch. Is that correct? So that's not being changed.
No, there is a parapet roof associated with or parapet associated with a flat roof. Like the height of the parapet is proposed to change slightly, but there would still be a parapet. Yes.
Okay, all right. Good. Thank you.
Any other questions for the staff?
No, but I think just for a flat roof is not really flat. It's
No.
a 1/4 inch rise over 12 inches. And about your question about settlement, Betty, actually a flat roof would be safer because where you have leaking in a roof, it's where there's a change in direction and where the valleys are.
I talked to some engineers about this. A solid cement flat roof is more apt to crack or settle, according to the engineers I talked to.
Thank
I
you.
disagree respectfully.
Okay. All right, the applicant will now make its presentation on this matter.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Rene Alonso. I am the president of Alonso and Associates. We've been building in South Florida we're going on our 43rd year now. I was standing here about, I don't know, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, in front of the Planning and Zoning Board to basically make a plea for this change in the ordinance because I had started about to build a house that I did not feel comfortable with the roof design. I saw nothing but issues down the road, issues that I would have to take care of, obviously. So driving around, you know, I see houses that appear to have a flat roof, but then I found out that they didn't have a flat roof. And obviously this was a little bit of a conflict for me because I believe that this code back then when it was implemented was to have a get away from those flat roofs of the 50s and 60s that look, and this is my opinion, by the way, I think that that's why the codes were done back then, and that your town would have a beautiful houses with pitch white tile roofs, which was the thing back then. And as time goes by, you know, things change and tastes change, and hence you now have quite a few modern looking houses that appear to have a flat roof. So we've kind of gone around about trying to mitigate this look and falsely make this design to accommodate the ordinance. And hence, this is a very perfect example. When you stand on the street, this house will appear to have a flat roof, hands down. You will not see the pitch roof hidden behind the parapet. So I think an ordinance that was mostly done for aesthetic value has gone by the wayside, and now it's become it's being put to use behind this parapet wall because it's there, the ordinance is there, and so they basically, the architects have found a way of getting around the ordinance to create this flat looking house, and planning and zoning has embraced it. So it's a little bit of I don't want to say disingenuous, but it kind of is. If the idea was to not have flat looking roof houses, that's gone by the wayside because we do have flat. So when I came here, I stated my case, and certainly they said, listen, we're not going to be able to do this for quite a while. I knew it was going to be 2, 3, 4 months. Maybe it's turned out to be longer than that. So I had my variance prepared, and it was kind of hard because like Mr. Jones says, you know, it's black and white, right? It's a black and white ordinance. But as I prepared the variance, I saw that it was going to be, you know, what is my hardship? Really don't, the owner doesn't really have a hardship. We could have done the roof the way it's designed, and we could have had a kind of a crappy roof at the end of the day. And I waited and kind of waited, and I figured, okay, maybe by the time, because you know how it is today we can't get concrete Monday for Wednesday, we have to get Monday for the Monday of next month. So, you know, things haven't gone as quickly as we'd hope. But as I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, I'm at that point where I need to put a roof on. And so speaking to Mr. Guy, has suggested you should apply for the variance because it's not going to happen anytime soon. So here I am, trying to plead my case. I have looked through the ordinance, the proposed ordinance, the new one, And our roof meets all of that criteria. We have we don't have the ordinance states that we should have a parapet no more than 32 inches. Actually, our parapet is less than that. The house, and if we can put up, Carla, or my drawings there, I just want to explain a couple of things. If we can go to the exhibits.
Exhibit H.
Okay, going, that's,
The other way.
that's not, yeah, that's somebody else's exhibit. It's right after the, my application.
Oh, you put it.
I wanted to show you the, yeah, I can't be flipped, right?
Yes, yes.
That's one. Oh, no.
So as you can see, that parapet, and the one, can you show the one before that? So there's the same elevation. You have the parapet in here, that little peak at the top, that dark stripe at the top is the pitch roof beyond the parapet, which obviously you'd have to be up at 24 feet to see it. From the street, you don't see it, and you'll show, go to the next one then. So that is the house, and nothing changed except what's behind the parapet. And then following that, you'll see that this is what the house is going to look like. That rendering is with the pitch roof somewhere behind there because you can't see it. So from the standpoint of what the intent of the original ordinance was, we really, after having this been approved, I don't think we're changing anything that would be harmful to the community. I think it would help my client and the owner, the Welches, we designed, can you go one more? We designed a flat roof, which is here, to drain properly. We've gone through, one of my fears with the other roof, the other roof being a pitched roof. I tried to get this up, but I couldn't get it in time. But it created a valley along the entire inside of the roof, which, okay, I get it. I thought about this, how many of those drains are going to fail? But let's say that they don't fail, but we fail. All these lines go down and are connected to the drainage that goes into the exfiltration trench. So my fear is the failure down there on the ground, that something gets clogged, a pipe gets, collapses, and then you get this buildup of water coming up into the roof and creating basically a lake, because we have a valley all inside that roof. So with this roof, right next to each drain location, there is an overflow scupper on the wall, which is an opening this big, 4 inches from the bottom of the roof, that if it failed, if that happened in this scenario, the water would just flow off the side, and it would not harm. You would only have this much water right there by the drain if that happened, because it would constantly flow off the side of it. With the other scenario, having a valley, which so now where do you put the overflow scupper? you're going up to the parapet. So your valley is here, your parapet is up here, and the roof goes up to the parapet. So if this gets clogged, it starts filling up with water until we can put an overflow scupper up here. But by that time, you're gonna have, I don't know how many thousands of gallons on that roof of water. So it was a poor design. And for this particular house, I didn't see how else she would have done it, the architect. So I am begging that you all approve this. And by the way, I went through the ordinance, the new ordinance, and I believe that we have not exceeded any of the requirements. We're not going to have any, we don't have any air conditioners on the roof. We don't have any antennas. We don't have any elevator poking through the roof. We don't have an elevator. Our parapet is only about 12 inches. The height of the parapet has not been altered in any way. In fact, the house, the envelope of the house has not been altered except for the roof. And I just want to give the Welches a good, solid roof. And I think Mr. Guy would agree that this is better construction. Him and I have discussed that. So I'm asking you, since it's eminent that this will pass eventually, that you don't hold us up 2, 3 months, who knows how many months, so that we may continue and provide our client with a good, solid. And Ms. Bingham, to your point, this is not a concrete roof. They're wood trusses, so
Okay.
we don't have any issues with that. Anyway, I hope you vote in my favor and in the favor of the Welches.
Are there any
Have any
questions?
questions?
So what you're saying, which I understand is from an engineering perspective, this is a superior design because you're directing all the water in one direction to the drain.
The other thing, by the way, which in the pitch roof, because you can't on a pitch roof have an aggregate, an exposed aggregate roof, which this would be a modified roof. They had asked us to put shingles on there, which, you know, if water does build up, it just gets under those shingles, and shingles are put down with nails. So it's like, again, an accident waiting to happen. So.
Thank you.
Where are you on the construction schedule
We're
now?
ready to put on a roof,
You are right there.
right there. We are right there. So that's my dilemma.
See,
I still don't understand where the water from the roof is going to go. Is it all going to be channeled to one place, or like normal roofs, is it going to go off in many?
So we have drains on the roof, and those drains come down on, you know, 4-inch pipes, and they collect below, and then they're all tied in and go into the exfiltration trench that we have in the front of the house. So you know, we're containing our own water shed.
any more questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you very
Thank you.
much, sir. At this time, any other member of the public who wishes to submit relevant information to the board may come forward and speak for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Please indicate whether you are for or against the project, or neither for nor against the project. I would assume then there's no one here for any public comment. That being said, staff will now make their final comments.
I have no additional comments, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Alonso, do you have any more comments as the applicant?
No, I think that's what I need to say.
All right, do any of Does the board have any questions at this point, or do we want to start
Well,
discussion?
I've driven around the area outside of Ocean Ridge. And you're right, more and more units are being built with flat roofs. And I think as long as the drainage situation is handled, I don't see anything wrong with approving this.
Okay, all right, so I will now declare the quasi judicial hearing closed, and we can proceed with our comments and deliberation at this time. And that's what you were speaking to.
I would move to approve.
You would move to approve.
Madam Chair, if I may, since Mr. Alonso added, if the desire is to approve the request for variance, in the staff report, the staff has a number of requirements that really the new ordinance is geared towards. And so I would just ask that you consider adding conditions to it, because we do want to try to keep it as close to the current draft of the ordinance as possible.
Thank you, Counselor.
The conditions were no antennas, no, nothing on top of the roof.
Correct. It's not storing equipment and things on top of the roof. The parapet height, which has been discussed, appears to be less than the 32 inches. There's no elevator, so that's not an issue. The one thing that's not mentioned here that I will mention is use of the flat roof as outdoor recreation or space. The P&Z board has indicated that they're not in favor of that. So I don't think that's the planned use.
If I may say, I read through the ordinance and I think we have no access to the roof other than with a ladder.
Perfect.
Well, that was
For a
my-
roofer to come
that
in.
was-
That's the only condition
That's
that
just my
wasn't
question.
mentioned there, but yeah.
Any other comments,
No,
Betty?
I was wondering about access to the roof.
Okay,
Very good.
Yeah, that was, Mr. Alonso had mentioned that to me yesterday, that there wasn't a roof access. And I mean, just to say again, from an engineering perspective, this is a superior product that he's delivering for his customer in terms of drainage, rather than doing a pitched roof.
The one concern I have is that this board is directed to apply variances, and it's spelled out for, distortions of land and what we had reviewed before, and this is not the case. I truly sympathize with your situation. You want to build the best house you can for the owner. And we want our neighbors to have the best house that they can buy with their money. I just wish they would have put this roof in the original plans that went to P&Z, but I understand that those weren't the ordinance then. The ordinances are being changed now. I don't know what the final ordinance is going to be. And I certainly don't want our Board of Adjustment to undermine planning and zoning. So, I feel like you're in a pickle. I feel I'm in a pickle. I want the best for our neighbors and our homeowners. Timing's awful. Timing is absolutely bad for supplies. The cost of dragging out building with financing. I get that. That's not our directive as the Board of Adjustments. So I have a real issue with the process, not the concern, but I have an issue with the process. And I don't know how to negotiate this by allowing the variance at this portion of time, because I think we violate what our directive is from the town.
But along that point though, looking back through planning and zoning minutes, the last time this was on the agenda was February, and the minutes are still not available. So in trying to do my research to prepare for this meeting, I was limited to the history of what's taken place over the last year.
Christy, can you give us some advice here on the predicament we are in as a board.
Right. I think for the most part, the draft ordinance that's included with the agenda backup, for the most part, I think that is what's going to end up being the final ordinance that's approved by planning and zoning. There's a couple little issues that we really have to address with a pitched roof, because what you may not know is right now with a pitched roof, you can have a flat deck with a pitched roof, and you can actually use that flat deck for outdoor recreation. And so.
If it doesn't go over a certain percentage.
Right, there's a percentage, you're exactly right, there's a percentage limitation. So what we're trying to address is allowing flat roofs and appeasing the desire not to have it used as outdoor recreation because of the perhaps impact on privacy. And so we're now looking at maybe perhaps allowing for a flat deck as long as it's not on your second story. So you're limited in height of where that use could be. So for the most part, staff's conversation and tweaking this ordinance to take it back to planning and zoning is really looking at how we can make them relatively equal. And if we're gonna allow a flat deck on a pitched roof, allow for a flat deck on a flat roof, but have regulations that apply to both evenly. So if your desire is a flat roof, here's what you can do. If your desire is a pitched roof, here's what you can do. If there's an allowance to use it for outdoor space. So that's not the case here. As Mr. Alonso said, they've satisfied what's in the current draft ordinance, and from a mechanical perspective, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's really what's going to end up being how flat roofs are going to be treated for the most part.
That still doesn't answer my question. Are we pushing planning and zoning by passing on a variance
Right.
before they have made their decision of what the overall plans for the entire community?
And that's a
And
good
what is-
point. And you know, what's interesting about this is you actually usually see this in the reverse, where you have zoning in progress. And so a town will be in the process of creating a new zoning provision, and someone will be coming through the process and they want to do something the way it used to be done. And so you say there's a zoning in progress that prevents them from taking advantage of old zoning, and now they have to comply with new zoning. So you actually usually see this in the reverse. This is a situation where they recognize we're moving towards this direction. We're not there yet, but they want to try to take advantage of it now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for the builder, don't misunderstand.
I think the problem is if we make it contingent upon planning and zoning, we put him in a different.
Yeah, we do. And that's why, you know, if there's a desire to approve this, even recognizing that this really isn't a true hardship, then the conditions of compliance with the draft ordinance as is will allow for it to apply to this property. But that doesn't mean this opens the window for everybody to come in, and then every time we have some type of ordinance in progress, that they'll all reach and grab for it. You use your conditions to help limit the impact of granting a variance in this type of case.
Any more discussion? Because I will now entertain a motion on item number 2.
I withdraw my motion.
You do?
I think we should turn it back to planning and zoning and let them give us some advice.
Well, may I make a motion?
Sure.
I make a motion that we grant the variance for the flat roof and condition it on the roofs meeting the requirements of the latest version of the flat roof ordinance that is now in draft form.
Can we do that, Christine?
What if the
I
ordinance
second
in its final form is changed?
Then the ruling of this body would be that they have to comply with the draft that's present in the agenda packet.
I mean, that's all we can do right now is the draft. So that's what I would condition it on, compliance with the draft. All right, and we have a second.
I personally think it's a dangerous precedent to be set. I have no problem with the content. I have a problem with the process. And the timing It couldn't be worse for every party involved. And I don't know what we can do to push P and Z and the town council, and, you know, you've been working on this for 6 months, let's get it together. But to your point, these are all volunteer positions and they meet once a month. It's hard to push, you know, and we want to get it right. And I want to get it right.
But
So,
it's,
They've been talking about it since June, by the way.
Yeah.
no.
and to be fair, it's just to this one property, the variance. And should the law be further tweaked, you know, future flat roofs will meet those requirements, but we're doing the best we can to accommodate this homeowner in their application.
My problem is if we approve this and the ordinance is changed, is he granted the permission retroactively, even though the ordinance does not allow for whatever construction?
Right, you're absolutely right. So if the ordinance in final form approved by the town commission is different than this draft, they will have a variance that allows for what's under this draft.
Yes, it's particular to this draft,
Yes.
and that's it.
I agree with you.
All right, I guess I'll call the vote.
I think we need a second.
We did.
did.
She seconded, I made the motion. So we'll call the vote on that motion.
Chair Cody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Cassie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Member Bingham, how do you vote?
I'm going to vote no.
Okay, Member Hendon, Vice Chair Hendon, how do you vote?
No.
Member Sloat, how do you vote?
No,
The motion fails.
We will need another
3-2.
motion. Right, so even though that motion failed, we still have to take action on the variance.
Well, that would be a no action vote, right? Or beyond that,
It
just,
would have to be a motion to deny the request.
all right, does somebody want to make that motion to deny the
I
request?
didn't,
Yes.
And I'm just throwing this out there, 'cause I know can they defer it and see how far it's gotten in 60 days? Would that be an option for the board as well to see what progress we've done in 60 days?
That's an option.
Yeah, I'd rather see something like that. I certainly understand the concerns and the needs. I just don't know what the P and Z and the town council, it's a democratic process, right? The town council are elected officials,
yeah,
and we're denying them the opportunity to govern, right?
Right.
By undermining them through the variance process.
But should an ordinance take a year to draft?
That's a separate
That-
question. That's not
Right.
Mr. Alonso's question. It's a separate question. You know, yeah,
It just seems unreasonable. Could there be an ordinance passed, you know, that reflects what's currently intended within 60 days? That doesn't seem unreasonable. And
but
then
that,
if you need to change it down the road,
then come to town meetings and push the board.
well, certainly
Because-
if P and Z presents it in their final passage and it gets the first reading, I understand it takes 2 readings, but if it passes the first reading, I see no reason to delay it at that point another
Yeah.
month just for a second reading.
I agree.
But we don't have the final presentation. So,
Maybe-
but I think that's an option. I don't know how to phrase that in
I-
English.
I agree with that option. I just don't think we are in a position to try and make rules and regulations for the town. And because it could ultimately, that we change a whole neighborhood by deciding what we want to make a variance on.
Yeah, correct.
well, this
I
is
don't
a
think
precedent
so.
though, Betty. This is a single case that we're looking at. We're not setting precedent.
I'm sorry, cases that set precedents.
Respectfully disagree.
Given the building schedule, does 60 days give you reasonable amount of time? I mean, something,
I'm gonna be dead in the water.
You are.
Unless, I can work something out with Mr. Guy. If, I mean, certainly the roof that we're proposing, which I need now. And if, it certainly can be altered at some point to be pitched. And if I can go ahead and work something out with Mr. Guy that I can continue with this, let's call it at risk. And if I have to go ahead and put a pitch roof on top of these trusses, which I can, I can do that. But if I can move forward at risk with knowing, obviously him knowing what I'm doing, not doing it behind anybody's back.
when you say at risk, so that means you would end in compliance of whatever the
Correct. And that way-
legislation is.
And that way I can keep moving, and at the end of the day, him and I can go up on the roof, and if there's something that changes, it's tweaked, and something that, you know, we can go ahead and change, make that change.
That's not for us to decide. So that's, I think that's a viable option for you. I mean, if you're the one at risk. So, but that's not what this board does. Yeah.
He's the building official, so, and I certainly don't want to do anything.
Well, I think you could have the variance and condition it on final compliance with whatever the statute ends up being,
I would certainly be willing to do that.
right, Christie? Would that,
Yeah,
You
then,
could,
yeah,
I
then
mean,
it's not,
the-
there's no variance. Yeah.
The
Well-
risk is, you know, backing up. With one meeting a month for planning and zoning and town commission, the quickest we could get this done, if they don't hold special meetings to do this, is probably 90 days. And that's the quickest. I went back and was looking at my notes from our staff meeting yesterday, and the remaining issues, in my opinion, obviously subject to final approval by P and Z and the commission, is that we're not going to see changes to what's really in the current ordinance. It's a couple little tweaks, like I said, mainly dealing with pitch roof and how we deal with the discrepancy between two roofs. 90 days is probably the quickest we could get it done if we went back to planning and zoning with a final draft, which is hard to do because we have a couple questions we need to get answered. But we could do that, and then commission has 2 readings. It's not adopted until second reading. So you do take a chance that if you just base it on first reading, that something could change on second reading and it doesn't get adopted. If you want to make the conditions that it complies with the final version, that's a risk also because we don't know what the final version is going to be. And if something happens between now and then with P and Z and the town commission, and they don't even want to explore this anymore, then there's no final ordinance.
Is that likely though, given that they've been discussing it for almost a year?
I don't think so, but I can't tell you for one way or the other because it's decided by 2 different bodies. And I wish I could. I probably wouldn't be in this
But if
job.
we
I'd be doing
did,
something
if we-
else. But if I could read people's minds.
I know, but if we did, the risk is.
That'd be cool.
Mr. Alonso.
Can I interject something here?
Please.
Let's say that that's the case, and that all of a sudden, you know, forget it, we're not gonna have flat roofs, are gonna keep the way it is. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to get a CO because my roof is not in compliance. So I have to make the roof to comply, which I could. What I'm doing is not much different than what I have there now, except I'm eliminating the peaks and valleys. So I'm just kind of slicing it flat. So I can do that. And I could comply with the final ordinance regardless, or I won't get a CO and be able to occupy that. I'm willing to do that and take that risk in order to be able to deliver this house for Christmas. So, you know.
so what if we changed the motion or amended it so that conditioned on the compliance with the final law as enacted?
So
But then proceed with the variance. That's one.
Well, it would for the time being.
Well, if they allow him to move forward with building, he's going to be building something that we don't have an ordinance for. So technically, the building official couldn't sign off on it because, so he would need the variance if that's the condition.
Can they move forward under our present ordinances and be able to change it when the final ordinance is written or no?
I think that's more of a question
I'm
for
not in construction, so
our building official.
Mr. Alonso said he'll bear the risk. He's willing to do the economic risk of there being significant changes to the law.
And
That
Mr.
you-
Alonso, you are under oath, and this is being recorded.
Oh,
So if you are willing to repeat yourself before we make a motion.
Absolutely.
Well, the hearing was closed. Are we gonna reopen the hearing at this point, or?
It's certainly up to the chair's discretion if she wants to allow.
Well, I don't think it's necessary. I think we need to get the right motion in front of the board.
there's, the only issues, there's a possibility this house gets completed before the town decides its ordinance, you
Yeah.
know? So then how do you get a CO for something that, on a roof that you don't have an ordinance for?
You don't.
You don't. So,
No, but what I'm saying is that I'm willing to take that, it's gonna take me every bit of the rest of this year to build that house.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be just the way things are.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get appliances by the time I'm ready for them.
I bet.
So I'm sure, I'm confident that ordinance will be done in whether it's 3 or 4 months, it's irrelevant. I'll have a roof that's dried in and I can keep working, and if I have to make changes, then I'll make them.
All right, so I'm going to amend my first motion,
You have to do a new motion.
a new motion. All right, I'll do a new motion that we approve the variance for item number 2 for a flat roof, conditioned on them meeting the final requirements of the flat roof legislation that becomes part of the building code.
From a legal standpoint, it's just like any conditions that you put on a variance to try to limit the scope of that particular variance. As we've discussed, the risk is ultimately on Mr. Alonso, whether or not he has to then make changes to the roof to comply if the flat roof doesn't pass.
So the variance is only during the construction period. But in order to get a CO, no variance is going to be involved because he will be in compliance with the ordinance at the time of the CO being issued.
That would be
Correct.
ideal.
In the land development code, yeah.
I can live with that.
So can I have a second on that motion?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Will you call the vote, please?
Vice Chair Cody, how do you vote?
Approve.
Chair Cody, sorry.
She approves too.
Member Bingham, how do you vote?
Did you, yes, I'm having a hard time hearing you behind the screen.
Sorry, it's kind of hard back here. Vice Chair Hendon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Member Cassidy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Member Sloat, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Cannot tell you how appreciative I am of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And I
sir.
will comply with everything I need to comply with. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The proceedings are now called to order on agenda item number 3, quasi judicial hearing to consider the variance request for 26 Harbor Drive South. Would you please read the agenda item title, please?
An application submitted by Angel Darlene Johnson as owner of parcel property located at 26 Harbor Drive South, Ocean Ridge, Florida, 33435, requesting a variance in the provisions of Land Development Code, Chapter 64, zoning 1 and Article 1, District Regulations, Section 64-1, RSF and RSE Single Family Residential District, and Section 64-57. Balconies not to extend into the required yard setback, also from the provisions of the Land Development Code, Chapter 67, Building and Building Regulations, Article 3, Technical Code and other construction standards, Section 67-36, balconies not to extend into the required yard. To permit the extension of the second balcony by 2 feet, the variance would allow for a 23 feet setback from the property line and a relief of the 2 feet from the 25 required setback. The property is located at 26 Harvard Road South, property control numbers 46, 43, 45, 27, 09, 000, or 320, and legally described as Big Harbor State property.
Thank you. At this time, any ex parte communications should either be disclosed by identifying the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, or any correspondence be provided to the town clerk and made part of the public record. In addition, each member of the board may identify the existence of any investigations or site visits he or she has conducted, or any expert opinions received, and disclose any conflicts of interest on this matter. Any board members have anything to disclose?
Nothing.
Not on this variance.
Okay. We will then proceed with the hearing on this matter. Will the town clerk please swear in the witnesses?
Okay, does anybody want to speak on this item, please stand and raise your right hand. Okay, do you swear more for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Okay, when you come forward, please state your name and address clearly for the record and whether or not you can swear. Thank you.
Thank you. The town staff will now make its presentation on this matter.
Good morning, Chair, board members,
Good morning.
Morgan Gorman, Town Planner. As the town clerk indicated, this is a variance request for a second floor balcony to extend 2 feet into the rear yard setback. Special conditions and circumstances relate to the configuration of the existing home on the property, being set back substantially from the front property line, leaving minimal space for a second floor balcony, and that the current balcony is essentially not usable as a balcony space. This is an application that's related to one that came before you several months ago for a sun trellis. And the sun trellis structure is constructed in a way that it would be connected structurally with the balcony and would essentially tie into the balcony structure for visual purposes. The recommendation from staff is to consider the information provided in the staff report, in the application, testimony that you'll hear, and make a decision on the application. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you. Mr. Guy, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair Cody. I
Yes.
have to add.
You have nothing? So is that it from the town's perspective?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for the town at this point? Okay, thank you. The applicant will now make its presentation on this matter. Morning.
Good morning, folks. Bob McAllister, Darlene. First thing I want to say is I take responsibility for this slip up. Originally, when we had made the request for the variance, the only thing we knew was that there was 2 posts that were going to be holding up the sun trellis. And we had gone through the variance about our backyard's 25 foot and everything was approved. And so where I'm taking responsibility for the slip up is at the time we had 2 full-blown sets of engineering drawings made. One showed the post at the edge of the sun trellis, and then the second set had the engineer have it be cantilevered back about 7 foot or whatever the exact measurements were, which then met the the criteria for the canal and all that stuff. And I'm sorry. And then so where I didn't know didn't happen is we had supplied both of the sets of engineering drawings to the city to do the thing, but unfortunately These drawings were not in the package. They had been submitted, and I just assumed that everything that everybody was looking at was the drawings. And on both sets, the post at the end and the post on page 2, and then there's like 3 more pages in it, right off the bat, it shows the balcony, right? Like first page is like, here's the sun trellis, and here's the balcony where it gets wrapped around, and then, and I know you guys have it in there now.
It's in exhibit H, if you want to go.
But let me just say, and then there's a full-blown drawing in there of the balcony, showing how it gets built and the trusses that goes into the walls and how it's built to be beefy and strong so that the beams from the sun trellis can connect to it. And the only reason that we weren't putting the beams on the house was because then the sun trellis would only be about 7.5 foot off the ground. But if we wrapped it around the balcony, then it would be 9.5 foot off the ground. So when after we got the permission from you folks to build it and we put in the building permit and the city started to look at the drawings, they realized that there was another thing here called the balcony. And I'm sorry that I didn't know when we were doing the variance that my drawings were not part of the application picture, because we never had any intent to snooker anybody or pull anything over anybody's eyes or something like that. And because without the balcony, so the balcony we got right now is this fake little old wooden jalopy thing that just sits there, it's fake. It's because when the house was built, our 25-foot setback, they allowed us to build like this little 3-foot balcony. It's fake. You can't really do that. You can't put a chair on it. So when we were doing the thing and the engineer said it's got to be stronger, we expanded the balcony 2 foot so we could put a chair on it. But the balcony itself, okay, is like here, and the shade structure that's already been approved is wrapped around it. You don't even see the balcony. It's like invisible. It's really all I got to say.
And if you look at some of the photographs, the balcony, the 2x4s were rotting. It was 25 years old. So we put that new material that doesn't corrode, and it's safer. Imagine if I had this trellis put up and the wood is rotting. That was my concern.
It wouldn't hold it. You'd have to, so that's
You can see the rotting wood.
What page is the drawing thing in
It's in exhibit H.
No, that's just the survey. It's, oh, you mean the whole thing is called exhibit H? Okay. Can we go to exhibit H? Okay, go back 1 page. That one, right there, bingo. So that's right there on the first page of the engineering drawings, where that's the sun trellis, okay? And then that like little horseshoe there in the front, that's the house and that's the balcony. So the sun trellis gets wrapped around that balcony. And if you would kindly go to the next page, that's the picture from the engineering drawings of the balcony, showing how the struts have got to go into the wall of the house with the steel iron rods that's called the joist thing going into the house to hold it and fortify it. And you had to put the extra 2x12 planks, 3 of them on the outside, so it had the strength to support the beam of the sun trellis. So today we're here to say that in the variance that we had originally requested for the sun trellis, which we got approved, this balcony had always been part of it, but because we never knew, there was no post nothing to hold it up on the ground. It was just up there in the air. We never knew that that was going to be part of the variance thing. We only thought the other thing we had to request was the thing for the post.
Gotcha.
So that's pretty much the story. We just want to get this built and move on. This has been going on now since July of last year. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated.
We've enjoyed seeing you here monthly.
Next time, bring cookies.
Bring cookies next time.
At this time, any other member of the public who wishes to submit relevant information to the board may come forward and speak for a maximum of 3 minutes each. Please indicate whether you are for or against the project, or neither for nor against the project.
My name is Terry Brown. I live on Harbor Drive South. My wife and I have been living there for 31 years. There were 4 vacant lots when we moved in on that street. One of them was Darlene Johnson's vacant lot. So we don't look at anything except for the front of her house. We're neighbors. She's only been in my house one time, the time that she came over and asked me to sign a letter, because she really wanted this sunscreen. And she apparently recruited a lot of other people to sign that letter. So I have a neutral position. I'm not in favor particularly. She wanted it, and I think it's okay. Now you have a problem because there's a structural issue with the balcony. On reviewing the documents, I didn't see any review of the integrity of this extension and what it would do to the joists in the house if a windstorm comes in at 160 miles an hour. So my concern right now would have been the integrity of the structure itself becoming airborne. I don't know what's going to hold it down, if this extension of the balcony is going to be good enough. If you're going to approve this second variance, I would recommend that you have some condition on the integrity of that attachment. It shows some Simpson clamps somewhere.
Yeah, anchors. Yes.
Anchors. That's all I saw. I didn't see any study about how strong it's going to be once this occurs. So that's my story. By the way, I served on this board for 10 years. So I was a bit surprised that it got approved based on hardship, but that's another story. Okay, thank you.
Mary, have the rebuttal for that?
Now, or do you want to? Well, but usually yeah, you can, well, see if there's any other comments,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
and then we will have
Yes.
final comments. All right, are there any other comments from the public? Yes. Thank you.
Yes, Dave Hutchins, 33 Harbor Drive North. I first observed this pergola, I think that's what we're calling it, go up when it happened. There was no permit. The supports are on the seawall, I think. And we have regulations in town on various setbacks that when anything is done, it has to be in compliance with the setbacks. So I think Terry had a fair point. How's this thing going to bear up in the wind? My point is, apparently those vertical members are part of the sea or tied into the seawall, which I've never seen anything like that done before. And I think it's moving in a direction that could bring up a whole lot of other issues. I have a boat behind my yard. What's to keep me from just putting a roof over the top of it like I live in North Carolina? This thing can just go in a lot of directions, and I think that it's a difficult decision. I was surprised that it was approved. Darlene, I like you, you're a neighbor. I'm not speaking for or against, but initially you put it up without any consultation with neighbors. And then when you were called on it, all of a sudden, and I have your support. And I was like Terry, I'm in another function in this town, so I try to stay away from it. So I don't understand why it got passed the first time, but it seems to me that this balcony thing is just a Band-Aid to make it a little bit more secure. So leave it to you guys, but.
Well, a lot of the points you've raised, sir, we already addressed in the issuance of the variance.
Well,
The first
I'm aware of
variance.
that.
Yes.
But I still am making the point about we're getting the variance coming in with an additional balcony that is a supporting structure more than anything else. So that's why you guys get the big bucks.
Thank you. All right. Are there any more public comments? All right, staff will make its final comments.
I'm sorry, can I?
You're gonna, in your final comments, I'm gonna allow you to do that.
I have no additional comments.
You don't?
Madam Chair.
Okay. You may make your final comments.
To both gentlemen's First off, as it relates, so this is a site-specific engineered job that is designed to 185 miles an hour. It's to meet Miami-Dade hurricane approval. Now, the first answer I will address is the seawall. It is not mounted to the seawall, and in fact, the posts are, we said 7 feet back from the property line, but then the seawall extends beyond that. So the posts are mounted to concrete footers on the landmass. Each concrete footer, I believe, well, there's an actual foundation spec in here. Each footer, I believe, is 2.5 foot wide by 2.5 foot wide by 2.5 foot deep with four pieces of number 5 steel rebar crisscrossed 2 layers. So the posts are mounted to the concrete footers that are in from the, then as it relates to the structure itself, this is what's known as a smart roof technology. There is a Wi-Fi module built into the wind sensor of the structure so that as soon as the Weather Channel puts out a signal that says that the wind gusts are about to go to 85 miles an hour, the louvers automatically open up, rendering the uplift on the structure. There is no force against it. So as the wind comes down off of the beach, down through the river, down through the canal, comes up, there's nothing to fight against it. So the louvers open up, the wind goes right through the structure. The posts are not on the seawall, they're on the concrete footers that are in about whatever it is.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Is that part of Harbor Drive South on fill, or is it on part of the?
I'm on
bridge?
pavers. I mean, I have.
Pilings.
Pilings.
Some pilings.
So you mean the actual house itself?
Yes,
Mhm.
because you can put down a lot of concrete. but
He
it's
raised
just-
it.
In sand?
Yeah.
Brought it up.
Well,
Unstable.
Yeah.
that I don't know. I do know that the engineer, when they came out and they did a soil sample, that's how they decided what the strength of those footers would be.
And we've already approved this portion of
Yes, ma'am.
the construction. So we're just
So that's,
dealing with the
okay.
new 2-foot expansion of the balcony.
Yes, yes, ma'am. I just wanted to
Can I-
answer both questions.
Yes,
related
please.
to the hurricane.
Yeah, Bob, I have a question.
Yes.
Any engineer designed the balcony
Oh, yeah.
to support 180 mile an hour winds. So I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I think Mr. Guy has a comment.
Thank you. Just to reiterate that the balcony, we did not get any structural load calculations in the permit. What we noticed and why this came about is the balcony was increased from what was originally permitted, and that's when this came about. Having said that, if the board does approve this, we will be asking for the structural drawing, just to make it clear that, you're not automatically getting the balcony, it still has to be engineered. I know that you have a larger balcony, there'll be more requirements. Before it was not usable. Now it's a usable balcony, you are going to be required to have lighting, and you are going to be required to have a GFI. I've had a lot of pushback from the contractor. For example, the contractor insists that there's no electric attached to the louver. There's a presentation again that the louver automatically opens and closes. You need electricity for that. So, I mean, I just have to make it clear, there will be requirements for this approval.
Okay.
For you guys to know that.
No problem.
Okay.
I think to that point, the structure is known as plug and play. So the motors, which are low voltage, they just get plugged in. And I believe there's an outlet right up there on that balcony. But whatever you will have, whatever electronic specs that you need, you will receive that.
Okay.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question. So when we approved this in November, and I went to the site, I met with Ms. Johnson and went through our packet very carefully. There was never any mention. I went back through it after the last meeting to see where we talked about the balcony, not a mention of the balcony. And in fact, even looking at the exhibit H we have, is this drawing. We don't have an engineering packet. And on that drawing back in November, it shows the sun trellis, and then there's a dotted line, and it says the limits of the second story. Second story brick. And then it says limits of second story balcony as a dotted line. Nowhere on this does it say new limit of balcony. And we didn't talk about rotted wood or any of that. And then in the packet we got last month, when you came and made your presentation to us at the end, we had no recollection of any balcony modification or any balcony rot or anything like that. And I understand if the second floor joists are rotten, you should be replacing those, but that doesn't mean it has to be bigger. It just needs to be safer. And in fact, the drawing that we got, the same Exhibit H for today's meeting, it's just hand drawn in, scribbled in with an arrow saying balcony. So this, I'm just making the point that this was never mentioned. It was clearly not part of anything that we considered in November, any balcony modification. And so after last month, I went home and I said, wait a minute, let me go through all of this whole thing, not one mention of it. So that's, it's just a little,
Yes,
confusing.
that's why I initially said that I take responsibility for the fact that these even though I had submitted the drawings, they had not been put into the package. And I just assumed, okay, that by submitting it, everybody, that the city must have had some reason for not putting them in. Okay, but I had never thought about mentioning something that I never thought was the problem. I thought the problem was the posts, and that inherent in the package.
We were told there was a 25-foot setback, and that was the issue, not something in the air.
Yes, but when we approve a variance, it's not. But Darlene, we approved a variance for a specific sun trellis. It doesn't mean that because we approved that variance, you can do whatever you want now within that.
That's why we're here today, and we need another variance.
Stop, Tony.
All right. What?
Clarify?
Okay.
Yes.
So we did have a meeting with the applicant multiple times after, they told us what they wanted to do. There was some issue with the application. We did meet with them. At one point, it wasn't officially, you didn't give it to me to add to the package. It was just, you came in with the engineering drawings for a meeting. And you said, is this needed for a part of the package? We were not aware that there was a balcony added. So we said at this stage, for the variance, you do not need engineering drawings. And so it wasn't officially that we took it in and didn't put it as a part of the package. I don't even have a copy of it because we said we don't need it at this stage.
I understand, but we did look at it.
Because that's all we knew that you were adding.
And this is my point. I can only say it 100 more times. I'm sorry, I take responsibility for not talking about it.
Okay.
But we gave it to.
All right.
But it's like, I gave the information to everybody. We just didn't talk about it because we never knew that was the thing. We thought the other thing was the thing.
Okay, so you missed it.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Sloat has a question.
Yes.
Has the engineer given you said that the trellises has an 185 mile an hour wind motor attached. What about the weight or the wind with the balcony? How many people can be on that balcony? Has the engineer told you?
Well, we do have the balcony all engineered. So now if.
I'd just like to know the weight limit.
I don't know that right
Can
now.
20 people stand on
I
that
don't
balcony?
know, but I will get that information. I
Well,
know I
I
have the
think before we
engineering
go
drawings
further, we
for the
need to-
balcony.
We need to see the wind limit and the weight limit.
Okay, all right.
I have a major problem. The balcony was 3 feet by 11 feet originally.
Yes, ma'am.
A chair is 22 inches by 22 inches. Have you ever had chairs and tables on the old balcony and
No,
ever used it?
never.
Well, you could have put, if you ordered a balcony for use,
You couldn't use
you
it.
could put a
I'm sorry.
22-inch chair will fit on a 3-foot balcony.
And then how do you walk around it?
Well, you've got a door. If you wanted to sit and you could walk around it. I
Sorry,
mean, I have a problem being faced with a second variance on the first variance, particularly when it exceeds. we have rules and regulations, so all people in the neighborhood can enjoy views and wind and everything else. And every time we give a variance, it impinges upon someone's property rights.
Absolutely understood, which is why we took not only the engineer, but that it would be aesthetically invisible. You don't see the balcony. You don't see it.
But you're going 3 feet into the setback.
Well,
2 feet, Betty.
see that little picture above right there?
I thought it was
There's
2
right
feet.
there. That's the
2 feet
3 foot
on the
sticking
end of
out.
your nose is a long distance.
And now it's coming out another 22 inches. But you don't see it because the structure is around it. So you don't see the balcony.
You don't.
Okay? And that old picket railing that's up there, that's all taken down with, very hip, cool, modern cable rail, which once again is almost invisible to see.
Okay. Any more questions for Mr. McAllister?
We approve something.
Any more questions for Mr. McAllister? Any questions for the town or any other people
Yes,
who
I have
spoke?
another question.
All right.
Without reinforcing the balcony or building it bigger, can you put the sun trellis in the way it was designed?
You mean with the existing balcony?
Yeah.
Well,
No.
we could not use the existing balcony. All right, it was rotten. So that all had to be taken down, and then we would have just had to have gotten, new deck material and replaced the old with new. That could have been done, but that wasn't part of, the way it was engineered. And that would not have been effective. It just would have had more of the same.
In other words, you planned to make the balcony bigger when you turned in the engineer design for it
Yes, ma'am.
without asking for an additional variance to increase the size and length of the balcony.
That is correct, ma'am, but only because we didn't know that was what we had to do. When we came in for the variance, we thought the only thing we had to request was for the posts, because this thing was up in the air and not impeding upon anything. It never crossed our mind.
Where was your contractor? Contractors are supposed to know things like this.
Yes.
Because the way it was presented to us in November, it looked like it was constructed around the balcony and there was an opening. And there was no explanation for that or a question raised about it.
Again, on me, by submitting by going over the drawings with the folks, the times that we went, there was never any attempt to hide it. It jumps right out at you. But it's on me. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. But when we submitted it,
We were told that the variance, but we needed a variance for the 2 posts.
period. That's
And
all.
that was all we were.
We didn't
told.
know there was any consideration about the balcony.
Neither do we.
But it's connected to a pergola that is approved. So if it's 2 feet of pergola that is around it, or if there's 2 feet of balcony, it doesn't really make a difference.
Well, it does according to our code. That's the point. It makes a difference according to the code.
But now we have this before us,
Yeah.
this issue that we missed the first time or wasn't presented.
But it
So,
wasn't presented to us.
all right. And he said mea culpa 30 times, I counted. But I think we have to look if there are any more questions just with regard to this balcony and the extension.
No questions for the applicant?
Yes, no, okay, thank you. And no
you.
more question for the town,
I have a question
Oh.
for the town. So,
for the town.
yeah, I am not an engineer, but it only seems logical to me that if you strengthen the balcony by putting the joists back into the house and connecting them to the trusses, it can only make whatever's attached to it stronger as well. There's no way that this can be not improved by the additional strength they're adding to the balcony, correct?
Without engineering load analysis, I cannot make that determination. One, I do not know the spacing of the joists that are existing on the house. The joists were ever intended for a balcony to be 5 feet. So until that load analysis is done and we look at the structural weight limits of what's going to be on that deck, I cannot say that. And additionally, that based on his testimony, I'll also be looking for not just the deck to support itself, but the weight of the deck to now support the trellis.
Correct.
So we have 2 different loads that would be applied to the deck.
Yeah, I would imagine that would have to be required anyways, even with the old deck, right?
Again, this came up during review, and it's during review that it would realize that, you know, there would be attachments and that the deck exceeded what was granted according to the application that we saw. So that's why this came up.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the fact that they used or didn't use the balcony is inconsequential. What's consequential is if you're adding a structure that's being attached to it, it's got to be strong enough to support it, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
But it doesn't need to be made bigger to be made stronger.
I understand.
Question, with the balcony staying the same size, but taking out a rotten balcony and replacing it, would they be able to have their sun trellis the way it was designed?
No, because now the material for the sun trellis has been cut based upon the new design of the, I'm sorry, based upon the new design, the material has already been cut. We've already contacted the manufacturers if we can get any more material. There's maybe a year or so away from now, we might be able to get the material. They're not even taking any new jobs right now.
In other words, you cannot build the sun trellis the way it was presented to us.
No, yes.
Without
we
increasing,
can-
no,
we can
the
build it the way
balcony
it
was
was
never
presented.
part of it. You cannot, with a 3-foot balcony, build the trellis.
No, ma'am, it was never presented with a 3-foot balcony. It was always presented with the 5-foot balcony. Always, from the very first day that I met with the city and gave them the drawings, even though the drawings were not submitted, it was always with the 5-foot balcony, always. There was never, ever a split second in time that the drawings were ever made or conceived with a 3-foot balcony, ever.
I don't believe any of us were aware of the fact that you were going to double the size of the balcony. It was not part of
We
the
didn't double the
plans.
size of it. We went from
And
3 foot 11
you
to
were
5 foot 11.
given permission to put in a sun trellis as it was presented to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Now you want to hold on to that variance, but change it.
They want a second
No,
variance.
we applied for a new one. We paid for this to come today
But that's
again.
for the balcony, not.
Yes, just for the balcony. That's all we're looking at today.
That's right.
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
When you put it up initially without the permit, how was it attached to the house?
It was mounted right to the balcony. The old balcony was taken down, the new balcony was put up, the structure was put around the balcony, and that was it.
Was that? Was,
The new balcony is already up,
Yeah,
the 5-foot?
yeah.
was the new balcony up and?
Without a permit?
Mhm.
Wait, the new balcony was constructed without a permit?
Yes.
Johnny, yeah?
That's why everything was red tagged and taken down.
And it was taken down within 24 hours, like we were required to.
Okay, any more questions? I now declare this quasi judicial hearing closed. And we will now proceed with comments and deliberation by the board. Who would like to lead? Carolyn?
That was just new information, that the balcony's already been constructed without a permit. So by denying the variance, what happens?
And they can't get new material to construct a new one. Or
I have a problem with things being presented which are not clear and all of the information there to be discussed originally. I have a problem with a second variance on the first variance in order to make the first variance work, if that makes sense.
I don't know, because I think the first variance works on its own.
Well, they
I
said
think
that
from the testimony that they
They
said.
said that it didn't. That they needed this in order to attach it. Am I wrong? Question. No,
Mr. Guy.
can they build the sunroof and have it stable with the balcony only being 3 feet?
Yes, that is possible.
Hmm,
It is possible.
It is possible.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, again, going back to the November packet that we have, why the only mention of balcony is the limit of the second story balcony at 3 feet.
Mhm,
It doesn't say limit of second story balcony at 5 feet.
That's right. So
That was the original survey map. That was the original.
Well, it was an exhibit to our packet that has been, modified by a shading in, just with
yeah,
pen,
Yeah.
the existing balcony of 5 feet.
You shaded it in to point it out in the second variance. You were told to do that. You were
Right, no, I
advised to
understand
do
that. It's just that it was omitted from the November variance when it was already there.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
If I may just throw some thoughts in. Obviously, the board has the discretion to grant or approve this. One thought is, the variance for the sun trellis is in place without any conditions. While
That's,
normally-
there were conditions.
Oh, there were conditions?
Yes.
The condition was that we would never enclose it.
Right, so there's that, but one thought I had was, you can always, while you can't really necessarily reopen that variance, because now that runs with the land that they can have that, would be to request the applicant's agreement that if you're going to grant this variance, condition the entire project. So to amend the prior variance based on the applicant's agreement to whatever conditions you come up with to make sure that this, satisfies the board's needs to approve it. So normally I would say we can't go back and amend a variance that's been granted, but in this case, since the two seem to be tied together structurally, and obviously with the applicant's agreement to impose conditions that would apply to both.
And Christine, I think one of the conditions was it didn't run with the land. It runs with the structure.
But if it was
If the
demolished.
structure is demolished, then there's no longer a variance for us.
Okay, so that might satisfy that, but just something to think about in your deliberations of perhaps tying the two together. So it's not really like you have two separate variances out there that they have to work together.
but if they only rebuilt the balcony the way it was originally, they would just need a building permit to do that, and not a variance.
Correct.
But they're asking now for this variance.
Oh, I know they are. I
To,
know they are.
so you would be satisfied with an amended variance.
As long as the applicant's agreeable to treating both variants the same way with the conditions that would apply to both variants, since it doesn't seem that you can have one without the other unless they go to the extreme of this variance isn't granted, then they have to take their balcony back to its allowable 3 feet structure and then probably redo their trellis so structurally the two work together. That would be if this variance is outright
Yeah.
denied.
My common sense approach is that there's been multiple errors in this construction. Initially, it was built without permits. I'm not sure why they didn't believe they needed a permit, but once they were made aware that permits were required, it seems that they tried to be in compliance with the direction from the town. It was taken down within 24 hours. They applied for a variance. Engineering drawings had been submitted. They weren't included with our first variance. We could not address what we didn't know, so we couldn't address the balcony at the time. The balcony has now already been completed. I imagine without the permit again, or that was part of the original issue. But the common sense approach to me is we approved the sun trellis to cover a certain square footage over their deck and pool area. The way they have it constructed, the sun trellis and the balcony are in alignment with each other. So we're really not encroaching on anybody's additional view, except they're strengthening the structure that they had. Obviously, I would require you receiving whatever engineering requirements you have to make sure that's weight bearing and come under compliance with every other code we have, be it electrical, wind, whatever. But in some ways, visually, with putting a cable railing, they're actually somewhat improving the view, if it even encroaches on their neighbors' views. So at this point, I would tend to agree with the variance, so long as it meets the additional codes required by the town, and which would also strengthen the previously approved sun trellis variance with in attendant with its restrictions going forward.
Well, I respectfully disagree
Okay.
in that they are going 2 feet into the setback. Now, are we going to allow everyone along that whole road to build their house out 2 feet over the setback? It's a creeping paralysis as far as I'm concerned. There was no reason not to just put the balcony back the way it was. I mean, it was rotten. If it was rotten, you take it down, you put it back the way it was, and you get a permit to do it. You don't take it out and double the size.
No, I understand that.
And I firmly believe a balcony should go back the way it was originally, because what you're doing is you're gradually permitting people to encroach upon setbacks. And planning and zoning has a lot of rules and regulations to keep this town nice, quiet seaside community, not getting structures pushing their boundaries all the time in the boundaries of their neighbors.
Agreed, but also I consider variances not to set trends. They're individual variances, and the reason we approved this to begin with was the issue that they had with how far back their house sat on their lot.
Well, they could have moved the house back further.
Mr. Vice Chairperson, how do you know by building the larger balcony it will strengthen both the balcony and the?
I don't know without the engineering drawings, but I'm
Right,
I'm
so
making
we
that
really don't
contingent.
have
I'm
enough
making that
information
contingent. Yeah.
To make a positive decision. I need more information.
Yeah.
At this point, I would vote against the request because there's insufficient information.
I think, I won't go so far as to say that it was an intentional omission on the first go around, but I just keep coming back to that there was never a mention, and we're asking for forgiveness rather than permission. But it's already built, and the hardship presented to us first with the first go around was the sun. It was always about the sun. It wasn't the ability to enjoy a balcony. So those are my thoughts at the moment. And we need to see, like you said, Bob, we need like loads, wind load.
But isn't that generally done after? Those would be presented to Mr. Guy.
When we go
Sure.
for the permit.
Yeah.
Yes,
So, I mean, I don't
But
think
permits
we
were
would
not taken.
necessarily.
we're going for it now.
Yeah, I understand.
And I'd love for you guys to come, if you wanted to come right now and see how it was reinforced, how much wood they put into the trusses.
The old 3-quarter, it was a fake balcony. It was not effective. I understand Betty's point that we could have gotten a small little chair and put it out there, but it's just a fake balcony. Now by having to fight, you got enough room for 2 chairs.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to make a motion in support of this variance application?
I thought I did.
I think you did
I
too.
think I did.
Did you make an official motion? I didn't hear the word I moved
Well,
to.
I
No.
I don't know if I
Don't make him
read
say it
all.
again.
Could you play back the tape?
I think you moved to amend the existing variance
No,
to
well,
add the,
well,
to
I'll try it again.
all right.
Okay, I move to allow the variance with the exception or with the contingency that they meet all structural, electric, and whatever other codes the town requires for weight bearing. Whether, and that's in conjunction with a loan and with the attachment of the sun trellis.
I will second that motion.
Okay.
And do we want to also make it conditional the same way as the sun trellis that is for the structure itself? So if the structure-
That the variance runs with the structure
With the structure, 100%.
exclusively, yes. I seconded the motion as presented.
Okay, and let me just repeat the motion one more time.
Okay.
Roll. So to allow the variance with the contingency that they meet all structural, electrical, and all other codes for weight bearing, and that the variance runs with the structure only. Vice Chair Hinton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Cody, how do you vote?
Aye.
Member Bingham, how do you vote?
No.
Member Cassidy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Member Lowe, how do you vote?
No.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2. Thank you. Is there any more business to come before? Is there any more business? Then may I have a motion to adjourn? Can I have a motion to adjourn if there's
And
no?
just if I could make
Oh, please.
one comment, we do need all conversations to be audible because of the sunshine law, so just try to make sure if you're gonna make a comment that if you're talking about something private, that's fine, but if it's something to deal with in matter, just make sure it's audible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will try and abide by that.
Everybody.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
You guys are awesome. Thank you.
There's no more business to come before us. May I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Adjourned.
I'm sorry, I don't like being.
Eddie, it's not a huge.
Yeah.